It's such a pleasure to be here tonight. Welcome to the 2026 Peter Porter Poetry Ceremony. My name is Georgina Arnott and I'm the editor and CEO of Australian Book Review. I begin by acknowledging that we are on the land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. This land was, until 1835, not even 200 years ago, open forest and grasslands, managed by Billy Balleri, one of three senior Wurundjeri Willem men in the broader Wurundjeri Woiwurrung clan of the Kulin Confederacy. Billy Balleri's domain extended north of the Yarra to the Maribyrnong River and the Merri Creek. We're here tonight at the Wheeler Centre in Melbourne to celebrate the 2026 Peter Porter Prize shortlist and to announce the winner. I extend a very warm welcome to you tonight and a special welcome to the shortlisted poets and to this year's judges, who this evening are in the room and in spirit via YouTube. I also acknowledge former shortlisted poets in the room, ABR board members and ABR patrons who make so much of what we do possible, as well as our outstanding team, Will, Kate, Annabella and Carissa, who go above and beyond every day. Thank you all for coming out on a Melbourne Tuesday to keep company with poetry and support our prize. Please be aware that the bathrooms are across the foyer, straight ahead as you exit, and in case of emergency, the gathering point is across Little Lonsdale Street at QV. And there'll be a quiz after this, just to check that you got all that. Tonight we will hear the 5 shortlisted poems, as well as read by the poets, who will be introduced by this year's judges. After that, we will announce the winner, who we hope will say a few words. Please stick around for a chat and a light refreshment afterwards. This is the 22nd year of Australian Book Review's Poetry Prize, which was renamed following the death of poet Peter Porter in 2010. Peter Porter spent most of his adult life in London, but was born and raised in Queensland, a fact which shaped his profound intellectual and creative contribution as an essayist, reviewer and poet. One other way that Porter shaped Australian literary life was through friendship, not least with former ABR editor and poet Peter Rose. We owe so much to Peter Rose for making the Porter Prize what it is today, an international award generating thousands of acts of creativity each year, attracting outstanding work from professional and amateur poets, and providing a platform for the long-listed, shortlisted and winning poet. Another friend of Peter Porter was Peter Steele. Yes, so many Peters. Peter Steele was the Jesuit priest, poet and academic, and also the person who taught me how to read a poem. Steele wrote the book on Porter, or at least a book, for Oxford University Press, probably commissioned by Peter Rose during his time there. I'd just like to read from his introduction, a very short piece, a part where he talks about the tricky business of approaching a poem, of trying to, as he would often say, catch its air, and also of a poem's uniqueness, inevitable imperfection, its aspiration, its humanity. And he writes, this is Peter Steele, "It is a common view that poetry would be something else if it could, perhaps something more elevated or more practical, but at least something less strange, less distinctive. Kinds of poetry which unabashedly and impenitently go on being themselves constitute challenges by that very fact. Randall Jarrell wrote once of death, I feel like the first men who read Wordsworth. It's so simple, I can't understand it. Good poetry, first read, is so something. If not simple, at least steeped in its own selfhood, a new way of being. This is certainly true of Porter's poetry, he wrote. And it is certainly true of the 5 poems on this year's shortlist. Each is steeped in its own selfhood. It is a great honour to publish these outstanding poems in my first year as ABR editor. The shortlist came from a long list of 12 poems, which itself came from more than 1,360 prize entries from 32 countries. Here I acknowledge and salute the long-listed poets: Jay Andros, Jamil Badi, Dara Byrne, Elena Croy Turu Reid, Ross Gillett, Lily Holloway, Kirsten Krauth, Cheryl Levy, Damon O'Brien, Claire Potter, Lisa Gluskin Stonestreet, Dominic Symes. And can I ask you to applaud and that long list. This year's Porter judges were ABR poetry editor Felicity Plunkett, Judith Bishop and Anders Villani. To this year's entrants, I say, you could not have had a more attentive or thoughtful panel. They read each poem, they talked, they read the poems again and again, they talked again. Thank you, Felicity, Judith and Anders, for being so generous with your time, so careful and deliberate in your decision-making, and mindful of the impact of a poet's engagement with an award such as this. Poetry is not easy to write. An award should be an encouragement, not a discouragement, and I hope any entrant who is here tonight sees how their own work, contributed to tonight's end point. I want finally to acknowledge Felicity Plunkett's work as ABR's poetry editor these past 6 months. She has brought a uniquely thoughtful and creative approach to curation, which has been an inspiration for us at ABR. Felicity is not able to be here but has sent a video. Felicity is a poet, critic, essayist, teacher, mentor, and was former poetry editor at University of Queensland Press. Her contribution to poetry includes a superb review essay on Sylvia Plath, which was published in the October issue of ABR. Tonight is about the Porter Prize, but for us at ABR, and for all those in the ABR community, it is a significant moment for another reason. This is the first event we have hosted in our new home at the Wheeler Centre. ABR had been in its former premises in Southbank for 12 years, but due to renovations was required to move. Out of this necessity came something wonderful: the chance to join a collegial community of arts organisations in this city of literature's centre for books, writing and ideas. My thanks to the Wheeler Centre team, Erin Vincent, Joe Toohey, Jean Smith, DM Nguyen, as well as Simon Cotter and Rick Maxwell Douglas, who have helped us tonight. Thank you for making Australian Book Review feel so welcome at the Wheeler Centre. And we at ABR look forward to many years of productive and creative collaboration. Now, let me introduce judges Anders Villani and Judith Bishop, who will introduce the shortlisted poets. Judith Bishop is the author of 3 award-winning poetry collections and 3 limited edition chapbooks. Judith's awards include the Kenneth Slessor Poetry Prize and the Peter Porter Poetry Prize twice. Judith is the Tracy Benavenua Ma Fellow at La Trobe University and is writing a book about AI and human data. I commend to you her outstanding review essay on AI, also published in the October issue of ABR. Anders Villani is the author of 2 poetry collections and is a poetry reviewer who recently completed a PhD on poetry at Monash University. He is a former ABR Rising Star and assisted ABR's previous poetry editor, John Hawke. I welcome Anders to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Peter Rose was supposed to read a Porter poem and unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. And I, of course, can't match his oratory panache, but I'm going to do my best. So here is Frogs Outside Barbischio by Peter Porter. How reassuring to listen to frogs once more from stagnant water in an old brick cistern beside olive trees run wild and the unprogrammed flight of a butterfly over hot fields and terraces. One grandfather frog stays on his stick to watch a self-tormentor return to his book to trace his anatomy of melancholy. He's in Italy to surprise an old hopelessness known long before. The cosmos of frogs inside its wet-walled fort warbles and cavorts in the all that there is. Wise frog rejoinders have challenged that book. Come down to our waters, so pulsingly black, and lose all your stubble of fortune and truth. Here's art inside art, incision and sign of the purposeless minute outlasting its span, of the gloat and the plop and the stick still afloat. Thank you.
Hello, I'm speaking to you from Wongal country and acknowledge and pay respect to elders who include Willaraware Benelong. I want to thank Australian Book Review for its dedication to poetry. With poet Peter Rose as editor, this was always clear. Now, the new editor, the indefatigable Dr. Georgina Arnott, is, among many other things, a poetry scholar whose work on Judith Wright is exceptional. With an editorial team of Will Hunt and Dr. Carissa Chai, ABR continues to celebrate and consider poetry. Thank you to my co-judges, beautiful poets Judith Bishop and Anders Villani. With Georgina, our work was thorough and delightful, and it was a joy to work together to select these winning poems and to share the sense of responsibility and joy in poetry we all feel. I want to thank the winning poets for their superb poems. And I want to thank the many other poets whose poems we read, discussed, and delighted in. Here's a summary which includes words from all of us. 1,360 poets entrusted their poems to us for this year's Peter Porter Poetry Prize. We read with attention and joy as we weighed decisions with the care of poets who have all entered this competition in previous years. We read vivid sestinas, blackout poems interrogating history, poems of mourning and love, vital experiments in breaking and querying language, intimate lyrics, pantoums, sonnets, and concrete poems. If the poems had a palette, its accent was the green of hope and healing, held gently in a wide range of poems speaking across time and place. Many poems also responded to current wars, grief, loss, and mental illness, betrayal, estrangement, and futility. We felt deeply the currents of passion and compassion in so many of these poems, and we saw how poetry, even as it feels less valued than at many times in history, still provides a place of refuge and a way to speak about what cannot otherwise be spoken. This is the work Tracy K. Smith speaks about when she describes poetry's capacity to express the notion that your life must be as important to you as mine is to me. Thank you.
I'm sorry we missed out on the introduction there. That was Felicity Plunkett coming in from Sydney. And now we're moving on to the next part of the evening. Thank you, Anders, for that lovely Porter poem. It was so good to hear that voice reverberating here. And thank you, Georgie, for the introductions, and to Felicity and Anders for being part of this wonderful judging panel. It was such an honour and delight to judge poems together with them. So I'm now delighted to introduce the first shortlisted poet, Jay Andros from the United States. I'm going to read first the biographical note and then the judge's comment on the poem. Jay Andros writes to find a more freeing form of communication. Originally from Washington, D.C., he was exposed early to protests and continues to work from New York City or the San Francisco Bay Area. His writing has been featured on radio shows, in short films, in anthologies, and on stages around the world. Jay Andros co-founded the poetry publication Poets Reading the News and has taught and studied creative writing at New York University and other institutions. And the judges commented as follows on Jay's poem, American Influences. With the mythic sweep of Whitman or Ginsberg and the acuity of a lyric essay, this capacious poem attempts to hold the current moment in the United States, like filings of a precious corroded metal. Nimble leaps between past, present, and future, a formal refinement that careens and fractures with its subject, tonal fluidity, historical record, critical theory. The poem deploys its resources with deft insight and blazing commitment. Through invocations to AI tools, as a lyric might invoke a deity, the poem dramatizes the crisis of futurity and truth itself, what we seek by pursuing it, where to find it, who gatekeeps it. The first-person speaker traverses the country and the American continent with a gaze at class struggle, at racial injustice, at climate breakdown, at isolationism and loneliness that urges a response and makes a response possible. And we will now hear Jay read their poem.
American Influencers by Jay Andros. Pre-dictatorship, without knowing it, I shared my home with the rats. They ate even from my open cabinet. When I found their teeth marks on the morning figs, I realized together we had been waiting for them to ripen. In unison now, simple membranes separate all of us from death. On the American highway, driving 75 miles per hour, then in traffic, I'm surrounded by people, a rhapsody of people, sitting in their cars with their families, their faces sudden, as if we've just entered into community. In New Orleans, at the Mudlark Theater, I watch Michelle Rose Seipel perform. Her live animations make me feel like life could be one image after another. Is that right? Hey Siri, what does Mudlark mean? Mudlark was a name given to children who searched through the mud of the Thames River in London for anything of value. Cruel passers-by would throw coins into the river for hungry children to chase. Fear is the mind's way of returning. My maternal grandparents all worked on the Thames, their childhoods for the lowest bidders. The point of every poem is its punctum, which can emerge at any time. The punctum is the moment the poem settles for itself. When I first left childhood, I went south, from Panama to Peru, then north to Colombia. There, in a small town, I saw people sifting through trash, through thin and meager waste for something to eat. Fear is the mind's way of returning. At 20 years old, I visited the absence of ruins in Poverty Point, Louisiana. On that site, there was an indigenous trading village, one of antiquity's urban hubs. Now nameless, it had at least 100 dwellings. Thousands of years later, white slavers demolished intact mounds to form a plantation they called Poverty Point. Maybe some of the people there, forced to work in the soil, recovered carvings, knives, jewelry, stone-red owls, ancient cloth and shells, ported from far away long ago and torn asunder. People of this era have found such things. Maybe it is a delusion of whiteness that makes me question if the moment is continuous. It's not really like animation, where one image follows another. In the center of town, in Aspen, Colorado, on a display you can see the dejected look in the eyes of two people, an impoverished man and boy, who mined from that mountain the largest hunks of silver ever found, in a year when the price of the metal was nothing. The display calls it ironic, not tragic. In Aspen, I've seen one indigent person, a man standing still in the town square. He held two reusable shopping bags, put them down by a tree, and walked away. Did you see him? Who have you seen? And who have you avoided looking in the eyes? The day after the election, Judith Butler asked, "Which of the people is the people? Who are the demos of democracy?" Hey Siri, what does demos mean? Demos meant land, but came to signify people trapped like migrants in the synecdoche of borders. There's that necessity of land to be considered a person. People glit, but began solid. Alice Templeton asks, "What is the best use of your hands?" She tones it like the last two rings of the bell. We took down our posters of political hopefuls. From the margins of tragedy, an unnamed chorus sings in unison. All around us is all of us. Until the winter solstice, the country was slowly covered in shade. Okay, Siri, which actions are illegal? Sir, who is in charge here? Red line. People who muddle around thinking, if I'm not broke, then why fix it? I slip on glit. A body stands for all, a country. A country suggests solidarity is more solid. Alexa, what country? What force? What population? What hesitation? What area? What era? What manufactured? What ourselves? Do I pronounce my own surname wrong? What is wrong? Alexa, what grows more absent than wealth? Who represents us? Machinations. Who clocked out? Who clocks in? My daughter asks me, what is luxury? More of what drones, I think. An expensive othering. Wind lifts plastic above our heads. She jokes that means the wind is new.
Thank you, Jay, for that spellbinding reading.
Our next shortlisted poem is Diverging by Kirsten Krauth. Kirsten Krauth is an author, podcaster, editor, and poet. Her latest novel, Almost a Mirror, was shortlisted for the Penguin Literary Prize and SPN Book of the Year and recognised by The Guardian as one of the best Australian books of 2020, sparking a podcast and live show. Her poem, Pencils from Heaven, was runner-up in the Blake Poetry Prize, and her first book of poetry, Sweet Avalanche, will be published by Life Before Man in 2027. The judges' comments for Diverging. If poetic form, as Denise Levertov argued, can be a, quote, method of apperception, of recognising what we perceive, and is based on an intuition of an order, then the intuition behind the form of diverging, the juxtapositional logic of acceptance and love, draws its reader into felt and embodied forms of care. The repeated slashes are attain, retaining the image of a child on the verge of adulthood, and a formal trope for neurodivergence and gender transition. In a complex dance of initiation and response, the poem's lines begin with alternating pronouns, I and he. The poem generously approaches a generational divide with its adopted lexicon of, quote, gaming, jellycat, and heartstopper. Yet its language is strongly grounded in the simplest physicality of verbs. The poem's achievement is to approach with all its craft the infinite difference of another. Here's the poem.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Krauth, and this is my poem, Diverging. He never smiles in the places I think he will. He talks a mile a minute, or not at all. I see a child I held and treasured. He sees a sadness and a dead name staring. He forgets his meds with the alarm set. He balances the cat to stand on his shoulders. I change the kitty litter every day. He buys a whole wardrobe of blue and white. My clothes last for years, then they fall apart. He makes choc chip cookies every week. I hide maple syrup so he doesn't drink it. He could write a PhD on the Crane Wives. I listen to his playlists for common ground. He has sore tummy, so I pick him up. I text him I heart you to make everything okay. He screams fuck every night in the cold dark hours. I wake up heart pumping, but he never remembers. He wears shoes that don't quite fit. I wear suede boots that get muddier each winter. He won't go to drama cause too many mirrors. I lie to mine each day with sweet tender smile. He reads Heartstopper over and over. I forget each TV show as soon as I've watched it. He says, "You've already seen this one, Mum." I pat him each night in his unmade bed. He says if there's a God, then he's really glad. He used to be a daredevil, always up high. I can't get him to walk out the front door. He speaks American when gaming with strangers. I sit on the couch and French Duolingo. He hangs up before our conversation has ended. I know he knows what I'm going to say next. He lies about having a shower every day. I sniff to check his teeth have been brushed. He wants to be a baker or actor or care for animals. I just want him to be who he is. He carries a soft toy to high school each morning. I buy Jellycat for his birthday that he loses. He wins family games every school holidays. I watch him bending the rules as we play. I like how his chin rests on top of my head. He's glad he's tall enough to pass as a man. Thank you.
Now I'm delighted to introduce Cheryl Levy. Cheryl Levy is an award-winning writer from the Cooma Nation who is passionate about language revitalisation. Writing in both English and her critically endangered language, Cooma, she has been published by Cordite, Griffith Review, Southerly, The Guardian, and in the University of Queensland Press anthology, Words to Sing the World Alive. In 2022, Cheryl won the Ujurununukal Prize for Indigenous Poetry. She has recently completed her first poetry collection titled Mudunda, the Song Country, to be published in 2027. Cheryl's debut bilingual picture book, Younger Mother, was shortlisted for an Australian Book Industry Award and a Queensland Literary Award for a work of state significance. And the judges commented on Cheryl's poem, Kumanjai, as follows. Pulsing between speaking and silence, anger and tenderness, the poem's spare lyricism flares into moments of repetition. These reflect trauma's return and return in kind steadily to ceremony and honouring. Beginning where anger meets violence, Kumanjai turns to observance, tending the aftermath of violence across this whole bloodied continent. The poem works precisely with diction and lineation, preferring steady witness to metaphor, as though swept clear of distraction. Drawing the reader into its momentum, shifting pronouns invite witness and ask readers to consider whether, ancestrally or now, we are part of the we who gather to heal, or the they who enact the violence, perhaps both. The poem's first-person singular I steps in only after partaking in collective mourning and healing, quietly requesting permission to address and imagine the young Kumanjai. In the year in which there have been the most Aboriginal deaths in custody since 1979, this necessary poem moves delicately and unswervingly towards justice. And I'd now like to invite Cheryl to read her poem, Kumanjai.
Yamagarangaru. Hello, everyone. Kumanjai 1. Riotous though the anger in our veins, still we dance the intersections of city streets. We march. We smoke your watch house, your felling floor. We smoke your paddy wagon, your prison, your detention centre. We smoke our bedrooms, our front yard, our suburban streets. We smoke now the dirt roads, the vacant lots, the supermarket, the bloody, breathless Coles supermarket. All of them, your felling floor. This whole bloodied continent, your felling floor. 2. O kin we must not name, cannot now. Not again. May I write you back, belly sated, spirit high. May I write you full of breath. Won't you take these stones from our grieving hands, child, who is now canopy and root and forest and cloud? We will come then with clapstick and song, sounding the edges of time We will make of them liars all, and you will be among us. 3. Ngawul. This is true Kumanjayi. Truer than the weight of their inhumanity. Truer than the lie that knee told about you. Ngawul. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I'm delighted now to introduce our next shortlisted poem, Invisible Hinges by Claire Potter. Claire is author of 4 poetry collections, Acanthus, Swallow, Nombre, and In Front of a Comma, as well as numerous essays and translations. She lives between Sydney and London, where she is head of the Writing Centre at the Architectural Association. And the judges' comments for Invisible Hinges. This ravishing poem resonates with the delicate precision of a world deeply seen, felt, sounded, and spoken. Here, lines that are all, quote, sheen and peck, the apparition of a satin dress, crushed emperor's clothes, torch beams searching for amethysts, spill down the page like moonlit on a river, as silver, grey, and white seasons give way to summer's, quote, wild golden altar. The lyricism of the language signals an ethical attention to the phenomenal world with its singular inscapes. Looking out of Georgian windows, the speaker imagines the invisible hinges of personal and historical transits. Even as its main subject is a love relationship spanning Britain and Australia, the poem observes the theft of country enabled by terra nullius and the original injustice through which, quoting René Char, poet and French resistance fighter, the fruit of one became the fruit of the other. And I'd now like to invite Claire up to the stage to read her poem.
Thank you, Anders, for the introduction, and thank you to everybody for being here tonight. Can you hear me at the back? I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land where we meet today, the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung and the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander and First Nation people here today. Before I read the poem, I'd like to dedicate the poem to a dear friend and fierce and legendary Yagamba poet who passed away last week and who showed me how to end this poem, who taught me how to end this poem. With permission from his family, I can include his name at this reading, but would like to advise any First Nation people here tonight that I will say the name of an Indigenous man recently deceased. This poem is dedicated to Lionel Fogarty. Invisible hinges. August ripening. One dimension traverses the fruit of the other. Warring dimensions. I strike the iron of invisible hinges. René Char. Autumn. Floating like the apparition of a satin dress in cold light, steam ribbons and rises from the boiling pot. Outside, a seagull's wail corrodes the edge of nightfall. I set the clock and tie my apron, holding in the stucco of how are yous and goodbyes, waiting for last week's pasta shells to ripen inside the somersault of silvery water. Sky peels away in copper and charcoal flakes while, on the star-flecked asphalt, a crow, all sheen and peck, leaning into a collar of pale red feather, picking at small bones from a blood stamp of gull, fading now from its mate, circling my window. It's not the anvil beak that bothers, but how the thin disappearance of bird whets the figment of a crow's hunger. Winter. Long strands of cloud, dark and uncombed, drift lightly across rooftops as the wind changes. All is tarnish, hazel and mouse grey, and a man slightly off-centre, smoking on the jam. He peers through the felty darkness into a river where moonlight, almost disappearing, liquefies the line between mirror and water. In crushed emperor's clothes, he nervously ashes here, there, into the Ely current, tightening his coat against the flensing cold to hide in the purple of night hollows. The world sleeps. His pillow, a newspaper blowing into the breeze, weather-vaned, snow-flaked, like a church unbuilt from leaves. Spring. The scent of somebody else's grilled fish sifts through blue shadows in the living room. It's drizzling outside and you're migrained by the window, noticing a spiral of cockatoos bright against the smoulder of dusky sky. Patches of white and yellow, fanned like an aviary of cards, dropping to where you can hear but no longer see them. The birds search your mind like torch beams searching for amethysts in the ground. You dress for dinner, meaning you take off your Friday clothes and hide them like bandages in the washing basket. Small as snowdrops, you tuck each of your limbs inside a trunk of eucalyptus. Arms into twigs, eyes into amethysts, legs into forks in the ground. Summer. All I remember after humidity and strawberries is loneliness peculiar to a midsummer's day. The sun folds its yellow eye, and I cross the warm, sloped hill down to the river. Pollen, slipped from lime trees, prickles inside my nose, and as I make circles in night green water, gravity pulls from far away. Terra nullius, a sunburnt centre, a ghost-rippled time when the fruit of one became the fruit of the other. Through Georgian windows, I imagine a sunflower field, waist tall, lining the square. A wild golden altar, thick with the thud of hooves, measuring row after row across the gilt and slag of the place. The marks of summer's choreography pierce like a dream. A city of ochreous walls, a dolphin shaped in clay, swimming through maps glazed with pink shells and dry green waves, to a southern continent, falling awake, already awake, between us. Thank you.
We have come to the final shortlisted poet, so I'm delighted to introduce Lisa Gluskin Stonestreet. Lisa Gluskin Stonestreet is the author of The Greenhouse from 2014, which was awarded the Frost Place Prize. She's also the author of Tulips, Water, Ash from 2009, which was awarded the Morse Poetry Prize. Her poems have appeared in journals including Plume, Boulevard, Beloit Poetry Journal, and Kenyon Review, as well as multiple anthologies. She lives in Northern California, where she reads, writes, edits, teaches writing, and works with writers in her backyard poetry shack. We commented on Lisa's poem, In Costume. A work of rhythmic and sonic panache, this poem catalogues the masks we wear and celebrates and laments the lives they make almost possible. While rooted in urban United States, the poem does what great lyrics do, attains broad resonance through precision. Dresses and their accoutrements here are more than yearnings for new identities, new ideologies, new ways of acting upon the world and feeling the world acting upon us. They are portals, transfiguring reality itself, cracking it open, if temporarily. In telling the story of those portals, the poem becomes one too, thanks to the poet's quicksilver control of pace, tension, imagery, and enjambment. A Volta leaves the reader full of interpretative possibility. We open a wardrobe of implication from which every reading pulls a new dress. And we'll now hear Lisa reading her poem.
I'm going to be reading my poem, In Costume. When I was young, I had a wardrobe full of vintage dresses and party after party to wear them to. Crawled the bins in Boston, splashed out at La Rosa on Haight. Emerged from my grandmother's closet, lifted and smoothed by a slip of weighted satin, fluted chiffon, the gray wash green of a fleck at the core of my eye. In basements and dorm rooms and bars and packed low-lit railroad flats, raves and reunions, and once a commune in a crumbling Cap Street mansion, rising maze of blacklit chambers that spat me out on a shale ledge hunched over dark gardens below. Those years, each night demanded a name, a story, a dress. Audrey, slim black silk cigarette holder. Marlena, crisp white tux. Marilyn, Angora, of course. Alice in demure blue and bemusement. Eloise with her turtle. Zelda, her notebook and flask. Sorceress and groupie. Harpy and schoolgirl and empress and pawn. And that last night, the last October of the century, corner of Castro and Market, red satin and combat boots, ripped fishnets, and towering white feathered wings. Little white pill dissolving on my tongue as the clock ticked over to now. Fallen angel, get it? I wanted everything, of course. I wanted so hard to have it both ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, it is my deep honour to announce the winner of the 2026 Peter Porter Prize, Kumanjahi by Cheryl Levy. And Cheryl, would you like to come up and say a few words?
They normally tell you if you won, especially if you live interstate. I told all my friends I didn't win and not to bother coming. And I'm so delighted that my daughter is in the room. At the time that this continent was colonised, my matriarchal ancestor, Kitty of Bolin, was living on her country. She had Emily. Emily had Annie. Annie had Beryl, my grandmother. Beryl had Patricia. Patricia had me. And I had Anae, who was sitting in the front row, listening to how all of those women made it possible to speak truth to power. The truth of the devastating grief caused by colonization that is ongoing as we sit seemingly powerlessly by and watch numbers ebb and flow and flow and flow of our people dying in custody. Kitty couldn't have written these words and hoped to have a room of people like you listen. My mother couldn't have written these words. Indeed, she wasn't allowed to continue her schooling beyond grade 3. I stand in front of you as a winner of the Peter Porter Poetry Prize and the first generation of people to have been allowed to finish primary school. It's hard to say thank you. I'm sure you can understand that after I have put it in those terms, but I am indeed grateful to the ABR. And again, it's hard to say that I'm delighted given the subject matter of my poem, but I am deeply honoured to have been able to tell this truth and by some maybe happy accident, have people actually listen. Thank you so much.
That was a lovely chat. That was an amazing speech. Beautiful speech. Thank you. Australian Book Review congratulates Cheryl Levy and all the shortlisted poets and welcomes you to come and stay and celebrate the shortlist with us tonight. You're very welcome and thank you for coming. Good night.